Hello and welcome to this special webinar of the OPUS Legacy Roundtable series, where we feature conversations with iconic thought leaders and business trailblazers, brought to you in partnership with OPUS by Prudential, a dedicated high net worth offering designed to meet your wealth management and legacy planning needs. I'm Melissa Hyuk. Now, each conversation in the OPUS Legacy Roundtable series explores various aspects of crafting a legacy and the motivations and inspirations behind it. In this evening's conversation, we'll explore the idea of longevity, something that's both appealing and daunting. Now, it's appealing because the will to live is a natural instinct for humans, or any sentient being for that matter. It's also daunting because longevity also means being old and having all the problems that come with aging. But apparently, longevity need not equate aging. Is there a difference? And if there is, what is it? And what does it mean for us, our family, and society? Well, this topic is becoming increasingly important because we're all living together, or we're all living longer than ever before. Now, in Singapore, we have one of the highest life expectancy rates in the world at nearly 84 years, and this number is continuing to rise. But increasing lifespans come with challenges. Now, Prudential's latest research, Reimagining 100, shows that more than 2 in 3 Singaporeans are not prepared for their rising longevity from a health and wealth perspective. To learn more about how we can truly make the most of our longer lives, we'll be joined by global expert on longevity and the aging society, Professor Andrew J. Scott, dialing in from the UK. Well, Andrew, thank you for being with us today.
Now, as I mentioned, with the day going from 24 to 32 hours, this is really about time. So let's do the following thought experiment. Let's ignore the first 20 years of life. Let's ignore the last 10 years of life. I'll give you an evenings to rest. I'll give you the weekends. But everything else, I'm going to call productive hours. Time you could spend doing something. Well, if you live to 70, you have 125,000 hours. If you live to 100, you have 220,000 productive hours. You have another 100,000 productive hours. And that basically is the exam question that we're all being asked. What do you want to do with that extra 100,000 hours? It's not about end of life, it's about all of life. How do you spend that extra 100,000 hours? Do you just spend more time doing the same thing? Or do you look to do new challenges, develop new skills and take on new identities? Because key to a long life is having a sense of purpose and a sense of engagement. But we will have to work for longer if we're living for longer. In the 100-Year Life book, Melissa mentioned earlier, we say, well, actually, how do I think about responding to this extra time? How do I construct my life? And I want you to think about 2 groups of assets. So on the left-hand side, there's your financial assets. As an economist, and I think about money, and a longer life requires me to save more because I'm probably going to be living longer and I need more resources. And that's why we have to work longer. So there's the financial assets. But it would be a terrible mistake just to focus on those, because we've also got to focus on our intangible assets. Let me just come back to the financial assets. I do some calculations, and if you're going to be living to 100, you've probably got to work until you're 80. But have a look at that intangible assets. And there's 3 key types of intangible assets. The first is your skills and knowledge. You've got to keep investing in those. So you can't rely upon working in your 70s on what you learned in your 20s. Lifelong learning is key. Then there's your vitality assets. That's your mental and physical health, as well as your friends and relationships. You've got to be investing in those all the time. And again, if you just work for 60 years, what's that going to do to your mental and physical health? What does that do for your relationships? You've got to be investing in these all the way through your life. Then there's something we call your transformational assets, which is your ability to deal with change. Change that either you choose or is forced upon you. I want to change my career. I've got to change my career because technology is taking it away. And in a longer life, you're going to have to be better at dealing with these transitions. And in the 20th century, we created a 3-stage life: education, work, retirement. And what we're sort of doing is just stretching out that second stage. making people work for longer by pushing out the retirement date. But have a look at that intangible assets. And there's three key types of intangible assets. The first is your skills and knowledge. You've got to keep investing in those. So you can't rely upon working in your 70s on what you learned in your 20s. Lifelong learning is key. Then there's your vitality assets. That's your mental and physical health, as well as your friends and relationships. You've got to be investing in those all the time. And again, if you just work for 60 years, what's that going to do to your mental and physical health? What does that do for your relationships? You've got to be investing in these all the way through your life. Then there's something we call your transformational assets, which is your ability to deal with change. Change that either you choose or is forced upon you. I want to change my career. I've got to change my career because technology is taking it away. And in a longer life, you're going to have to be better at dealing with these transitions. If you put all these things together, what you realize is that we can't respond to longer lives just by stretching out that three-stage life, just by working longer and retiring later. Instead, we see a multi-stage life begin to emerge. A multi-stage life is one of many careers and different changes and transitions. Sometimes working very hard, focused on money, other times recharging, a better work-life balance, giving you the scope to work on your health or your relationships, or perhaps doing something with the community and being something more social entrepreneur. So that three-stage life of education, work and retirement is beginning to break up. This is a big mindset change for parents. I talked about my own son earlier on, because we're so keen on our children to be successful, we force feed them into this three-stage life. But for all of us, whether you're 20, 50 or 80, this multi-stage life is emerging. If you're in your mid-40s and you're going to be working to your mid-70s, you've got more work ahead of you than you've done already. That's a real sort of big change that comes then with longevity. What do I want to do? How do I prepare myself? Am I bored with what I do? What is the thing that really excites me? How do I make sure that I influence how we age? We mustn't focus on chronological age. That's sort of how many candles there are on my birthday cake. You've got to focus, I would say, on two other things. One is biological age. What is my health? And make sure that you're as healthy as possible for as long as possible. Some very interesting developments happening in that space. But also what I call prospective age. Because really what matters is not the number of candles in your cake, but how many more cakes you're going to have. And at every age, you can now expect more birthday cakes. In the 20th century, we invented life insurance. So that was a world where, because many people died in middle age, you had life insurance and you made sure that your family was protected financially if you died in middle age. Now there's something else around. We have to have longevity insurance, because the really big challenge we face with these longer lives is outliving our wealth, outliving our health, outliving our skills, outliving our sense of purpose, and outliving our sense of relationships. We have to keep investing not just in our finances, in our skills, our health, our relationships. In this long life, you want to be healthy and always have a sense of purpose. The new imperative is to age well. If for the first time ever the young will become the old, the new health imperative is to age well. I hear a lot of talk about the silver economy, looking after older people. It's very important, but even more important is what I call the evergreen economy, making sure we age well. Will all of us be prepared to spend money to be looked after when we're old, but we'll spend even more money making sure we age well? Education, pharmaceuticals, food and drink, exercise, leisure. This is the evergreen economy that's going to start to dominate.
Prudential actually had done some research. The latest that I see is something called Reimagining 100 on Singaporeans that I understand you contributed your expert take to as well. It discusses the impact of the pandemic on our well-being and longevity. So Andrew, maybe let me first catch everyone up on some of the key findings before I get your view on them. Now, the study found, right, that on financial well-being, nearly half of those surveyed say it has worsened since the pandemic began. That's on financial well-being. Now, on mental health, more than a third feel that the state of their mental health has become worse in the past year. Now, for about 1 in 4 people, they say that their physical health has deteriorated as well. Now, in view of the worsening financial and work-related stress caused by the pandemic, it's perhaps unsurprising that the quality of relationships has also been affected. Prudential's 2018 survey had 9 in 10 people saying they were happy in their most significant relationships. But fast forward to Prudential's latest research, that number has dropped by about 30 percentage points from 92% to 62%. That's 6 in 10 people compared with 9 in 10 people before who say they're happy with their relationships.
I think it's really interesting that you should highlight especially the importance of the non-financial aspect. I mean, financial is definitely very important, and we will get into that afterwards. I really want to have time to talk about that. But when we're talking about the non-financial aspect, like physical and psychological health, there was a study that I found between Singapore's Ministry of Health and the Global Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation that found that Singaporeans may be living longer, but are also spending more time in ill health, up to 10 and a half years, right? And when it comes to nurturing psychological health, a Prudential study found that Singaporeans also tend to put all their eggs into one basket, their family. Right. So would you say that investing in non-financial matters might actually be the most common oversight that people tend to make when it comes to living longer generally?
Ageism is a very strange thing because, sexism, I'm probably not going to change my gender. Ethnicity, I'm not going to change my ethnicity. But every person who's young is probably going to become old. So ageism is a prejudice against your future self. So yes, we absolutely have to tackle ageism, and where actually you realize it's not really age that is the issue. People of all ages are just people. So that's the kind of the way in which you, I think, deconstruct this narrative. But it's certainly hard. But as I say, the key thing I think is you can start with your own actions and not try and infer anything from someone's chronological age as to what they need or what they can do. I think that's very, very limiting. Money is a way of giving yourself future options, and you have more future. So taking care of the finances is absolutely key. But then there's your health. And the thing I think that is really important for all of us to understand is to focus on age. Age is backward looking. It's about how many years you've had. It's also forward looking, how many more years to go. And what can you give your future self? Making a best friend of your future self is really, really important. So giving your future self money, giving yourself health, giving yourself relationships and a sense of purpose.
Andrew, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us for this OPUS Legacy Roundtable conversation. Thank you. Have a good day ahead. Huh? I'm Melissa Hyak. Thank you for joining this conversation brought to you by OPUS by Prudential. Good night.